Uh, so, deployment. So we did our React apps, right? How to do our React apps. We do yarn deploy. It would build our apps. Then it would push them out to Netlify. Netlify would give us a URL, and that's where we'd have our React apps, right? Well, for those of you who are doing two separate apps, React and .NET, the React stuff is still the same. But for the .NET stuff, it gets a bit more complicated. Only because with a backend, you also have a database as well. So there's a lot more stuff that you have to push up and go. So we're going to be using a platform called Heroku to host our apps. Heroku is like Netlify except for full stack apps. And the reason why we're using Heroku is, well, it's free, which is awesome. And it does not require a credit card to sign up, so doubly awesome. Unlike AWS or Azure, which are also free tiers, but they are very easy to pitfall into spending money. We don't want to do that whenever there's a free option available. And Heroku is a really good hosting platform in general. So the bad news is that Heroku doesn't support .NET natively. You might see some of your Ruby peers being able to push straight to Heroku and deploy to the web. That's not how Heroku and .NET get along. But Heroku does use something called Docker. Has anyone heard of Docker before? Y'all got smart to not saying yes. No, Docker is a way to package up your application and run it anywhere. So have you ever tried to use a virtual machine?
Yeah.
So it's like a virtual machine that's slimmed down but more powerful. The problem that it solves is that as we're developing locally, we're doing stuff, we're installing stuff, we're on our cool dev machines, doing our dev things. But once we deploy our stuff to production, it's in a whole new environment, right? And it's on some server, someplace else, maybe running a different version, maybe running a different operating system in general. It's how do we know that what we're running here will work over there? Seems like a relatively crazy problem, right? Like, why do we still have that? But this is where Docker comes into play. So Docker gives us containers and images that allow us to guarantee the runtime environment of our applications. What that means for us is that we can put our .NET application inside one of these containers and put this container on Heroku, then Heroku will run our app up in the cloud. How are we feeling about it? Yeah, it's kind of like one level higher than what we've been talking about. We're not talking about controllers or React or CSS or actual C# anymore, or even endpoints. We're talking about websites now. We've kind of gone up a level. So I am going to now come over here and I'm going to deploy an app. CD lecture 13, .NET new, DG React, deployment, deploy me. Let's call it deploy me. So I'm just going to take a .NET app. I'm not going to do anything to it yet. And then I'm going to head over here to Heroku.com, and I'm going to create an account. By creating an account, I mean log in. So the very first thing I want to do after I've logged in and created an account is that I want to create a new application. Now, when I create a new application, I have the option to name it. It's up to you if you want to name it or not. I'm going to say cohort. Y'all are 13, right? Sample app. So I'm going to create my own app. You call it something unique. It says, yeah, it's available. And this will give me my own website up on the internet. If I click open app, I get their nice little default app. That's fine and dandy. The only thing I have to do up on Heroku, apart from making the new website, is that I need to add a database to it. I need to say, hey, our website is using Postgres. So over in the overview, if I go to configure add-ons, I can add a Postgres database, provision, and that will give me a Heroku database. Yay, that's awesome. So now I actually don't need to be here anymore. If I come over here back to my new .NET app here, now inside of the SDG samples, whether the API or the React, we're going to zone in on two key files here. The two files that we're going to look at are the Docker file and deploy. We haven't really talked about these two files at all. They've just kind of been hanging out there. Has anyone opened them yet?
You told me to last class.
Did I?
Yeah, because I was asking about it, and then you're like, just click on it and check it out. So there's like a few lines.
So this Docker file is where the magic starts. And what this Docker file is a blueprint for how to run our app. And that's it. So it says that, hey, our app needs a .NET environment. And in order for us to run it, we need to run whatever our DLL is called. So we get our DLL name from the bin folder inside of here, debug. After we run it, we'll know what it is. Let me build it to show you. So here is our DLL file. In this case, it's called content.dll. So we just say, hey, whenever after we've spun up our environment, run our app and run this DLL. Then run what is compiled out of our application.
Will it always be content?
If you use the SDG template, you don't change anything. Yes. So that's the first thing you have to change inside your app. The second thing you have to go is go into this deploy.sh file. So this sh file is a script file that runs these 6 commands on your command line for you. These 6 commands are the commands you need to run to deploy your app. So what they do, they say, hey, build your app for production, then create the image, push the image to my website, and then update my website. That's pretty much what these 6 commands are doing. So we need to go in and change a couple values. Anywhere where you see SDG template image, this is what you want to call your image. This should be something close to what your app is called. So this app was called Deploy Me. So I'm going to call this Deploy Me image. Now these names are trivial. You can name them whatever you want. Just keep them consistent. Then the other thing you have to change is this Heroku web app. This should be the name of whatever you called your website up on Heroku. So this would be .NET or Core Cohort 13 sample app. So after you've done that, update permissions on the deploy app. Then once you run this deploy.sh command, it's going to go through and it's going to run all those commands. So it's going to build up our application, but it's going to build it for production. Then it's going to copy over the Docker file. Then it's going to package up your thing in whatever image you called it. It's going to take that image, build it, take it up to Heroku, and then go, hey, Heroku, there's a new version of my website. Deploy it. And this will take a little bit of time.
But in other, or like on the job circumstances, you could basically do that but not update it, just have like stored like markers of where we're going to be progressing to. Kind of.
Yep.
Okay. Or like if you were working for something that had like, oh, like the fall catalog, you just press the fall catalog, you don't release it until the actual date.
Exactly.
I like that analogy.
Because I mean, like sometimes you don't always want to like deploy anything.
And that's really where Docker shines, is that it's saying, hey, we can make a prepackaged environment ready for deployment whenever, and we can just kind of switch to the new one. Because no matter, even though if we only change 1 or 2 files here, every time that we redeploy, we get an entirely new container, an entirely new instance, like an entirely new catalog.
Are there ways to go through the images that you've created for deployments?
Yeah. Oh,
Is
yeah.
that in Heroku or is that in?
That would be in Heroku using their command line interface. You will have to install the command line as like brew install Heroku CLI. I'll send out instructions of how to do it and everything.
Specifically for that project.
That's only
Just
once.
return- oh,
Yep.
return.
So that went a lot faster than I was expecting. This will take a long time for your first time. That's just it kind of assembling everything behind the scenes. After it's done all that stuff, we head back to our app. We can actually view the logs. Go into more, view logs. And we got our first error.
So what is the 127 error? Because that keeps coming up all over the place.
So that says that there was an error somewhere and that we should check our stack trace. And this says content.dll was not found.
Is that a specific error code? Like, it could be like, yeah, my computer keeps telling me to enter a higher enlightened state.
Whatever they made the code.
So I made a change to my Docker file, and now I'm running deploy.sh again just to redeploy the latest version. I removed too much. We need the .net command there. So it's going to rebuild our app, give me a new image, and it'll push that new image up.
What's in content?
What?
What's in content?
What's in it? It is the compiled code of my entire .NET app. So all like my backend stuff, all my queries, all my controllers, all my startup stuff, that's all in the DLL. That's the actual bytecode. I don't recommend to crack it open. If you want to, go for it. You won't really see or learn much except from gobbledygook.
But if I open it up on my computer and someone that doesn't know coding is like behind me, they'll think that I'm really good at coding.
Yep.
Okay, perfect.
No matter what you do, you're really good at coding. You could be writing HTML and they'll be like, oh, you hacking into the network right now? Totally.
I'm in their main for it.
You changed the background color? Oh, you're crazy.
Go into the inspector and change how the web page looks and stuff. Look, I can mess with their website. I don't even know.
It's always fun to do to even a developer friend to be like, hey, go and like mess with the CSS and be like, hey, your site's busted on my machine. And like, yeah, that's really neat to do. So I changed it. We're seeing that, hey, we're restarting up. And then we should now see, hey, process is running, starting on port now listening on port, whatever that is. But actually, if I just go back to my app and refresh the page, I should see the .NET stuff. So I'm going to head in, just approve, just to do some things. Home.js. Updated image. So how are we feeling? I'm sleepy?
Alright.
I rescind my previous statement. If anyone saw me typing this, they think I'm an alien of some sort. Like, it's just like the ASCII text can't keep up.
Oh, yeah.
It is truly complicated.
Yeah, you actually opened it up.
Yeah. It warned me not to.
Yeah, do you want to do it anyways? I guess. Yeah. So what's fun, if you want to have a little bit of entertainment, there are reverse compilers online. So you know how your C# code gets compiled in DLLs, and then that DLL is your compiled version. It's like optimized, it's changed, it's stuff, non-human readable. There are apps that attempt to take that compiled stuff and turn it back into usable C#.
So you can like go to websites and
Yeah, if you get someone's DLL, you could reverse compile it.
cool.
Yeah.
So I assume they don't typically advertise DLLs on.
Nope. That's also why they're not stored in like source control and stuff like that. Waiting for this to redeploy. And deployments do usually take a little bit of time. It's not instant. No, it's doing a lot.
So when they say add this app to the pipeline, what do they mean?
Over here, whenever you create a new app,
Yeah.
so that goes into a DevOps kind of role. You can create what's called a pipeline, where you can say like, hey, if there's a pull request and it's accepted by 2 people, merge it in and then deploy it. So you can hook up like automatic deployments and everything.
But that's working within a team.
Waiting for it to redeploy. There we go. Updated. So you will need to install the Heroku CLI as well as the Docker app as well. The Docker is what actually will run stuff. It'll actually do the building and the compiling and the pushing. And the Heroku is what we use to chat with Heroku.
On demo day, if we have like a CTO or this or that or whatever, and they ask you to like manipulate around something in your code, I mean, they won't care that it will take however long it will take to deploy.
They typically don't ask you to redeploy.
Okay. Just show me on local.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is another reason why we say you're done on Tuesday before demo day, is that deployment, this seems easy, right? There could be a lot of pitfalls to getting things up, like API keys, making sure URLs are configured correctly, making sure everything's kind of moving well. Yeah, it should be easy, but programming. Typically, once you deploy on that Tuesday, you're done deploying until after demo day. Typically, unless we've had some students in the past that go against our recommendations and like deploy the morning of, and then we're stuck at 11:30, half hour before graduation, trying to get things figured out. Yeah, don't be that guy. Please don't be that guy. And then we have other students that take on that risk and deploy during demo day like 10 times just because they can. I know. So huge risk. Once you deploy, you're done. That being said, I recommend getting your first initial version deployed middle to beginning of next week, just to kind of iron out that detail. So you can rather be scrambling to finish a feature than scrambling to get it deployed and to finish a feature. Because updating is a lot easier than deploying the first time. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, that does. Yeah, no, we're just wondering because also it would make sense to do it on local host because you have stuff like browser sync or not that much problem.
Yeah.
Here you go. That's immediately what happened.
Yep. And typically on demo day, you're going to have your deployed version up, as well as your localhost version running as well, as like a backup.
Just in case Heroku has issues.
Or the internet. Because whenever you have so many people come to the one place.
Everyone's connected and then everything's running and
Yep.
things are happening.
Yeah.
Web inspection will get it right.
Everybody wants to stay over there
Sure.
every time. I don't understand that they everybody wants to explain